welcome to This Just In with This Just In as your host, Justin Corr. This is a show where we take a deeper dive into the stories most important to you with the people who bring you those stories and let you get to know them a little better. On this episode, another first-time correspondent, Andrea, don't call her Andrea Dearden. Andrea, thanks for coming by.
Happy to be here.
Appreciate it. Thank you for wearing the team colors almost. Appreciate it. The orange, go This Just In. You have the slightest of accents.
Do I?
I want to say Meridian.
Does it sound that what it sounds like? Yeah.
It sounds, really Western Ada County.
Depends on the moment, whether you can pick it up or not. Call it my southern sass. It gets a little stronger in certain moments.
You're from South Ada County.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Right. Grew up in Tennessee. So, yeah.
Well, let's start at the beginning then.
Okay.
Actually, I skipped my first question, but that's all right. We'll jump around.
I was really excited. I mean,
there's a lot. Oh no. Okay. Never mind. We'll circle back to that in a second. First, though, as is tradition, yet somehow I forgot, we ask all of our first-time guests, what would your entrance music or walk-up music be? We can't play it, but we'll just talk about it.
Okay. I mean, it really depends, right? I mean, there are a lot of options, but I think probably if my go-to would be Wide Open Spaces by the Dixie Chicks.
Fantastic.
Right, there's history there. Love it.
Yes.
Number one on the charts the day that I moved, literally sight unseen, from Tennessee to Montana to start my dream of being on television as a news reporter. And so, it has a lot of history in it. It means a lot. And I do kind of need wide open spaces to explore.
And you found them.
I did. Yeah.
Up here, Montana, and then also where you grew up. Look at that smooth segue circling back. Where'd you grow up?
Middle Tennessee. So literally the geographic center of Tennessee.
Okay.
In a town called Murfreesboro. And family's still there. But yeah, I moved there when I was 6 with my family and lived there until I graduated college from Middle Tennessee State and left to, again, live my dreams.
That is awesome. We talked a little bit about Middle Tennessee State right there, Murfreesboro. I had a friend who lived there for a little bit, and that's just a suburb of Nashville,
it really
right?
is. Yeah,
that must have been awesome.
It was. I mean, I probably didn't appreciate it as much as I should have. I go back now, and Nashville certainly has changed a lot. They don't call it Nash Vegas for nothing. And so it's definitely a different city than when I was growing up there. But it's a beautiful area, and goodness, I go back now, and the history there and all of the culture there is fantastic.
Yeah, culture, the music. You're going to probably not find a better music town. I mean, I don't know.
True.
Yeah.
So much talent. Yeah.
Yeah. And even just like people I've heard, not been there much myself, just people like performing at a bar or something like that on the weekend. It's like, how is this person not a multimillionaire?
Well, and that's my advice to people is to get off the beaten path, go down an alley, and just bar hop, and you will find so many incredible artists. Yeah. And Dixie Chicks, as an example, used to busk on the corner, and so they were.
What? They were just on the corner.
These artists, these artists, just that's how they get their start. So
that's incredible. I used to live not right down by there, sort of in the lower Midwest, upper South. Water there is a little different in that it's kind of warm. You were like, man, that's for me.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, exactly. It was, in fact, when I came here and when family comes to visit, because all my family's still in the South, when they come to visit, that's exactly what they comment about. Is what is this? When they get in when we go to the lake or we take them out on the boat, they do not comprehend what our outdoor recreation is like compared to the South.
We got melted snow here. Y'all got bath water down there.
It's so true.
But you were like, I'm going to swim in that.
I am. Yeah.
I'm going to be a competitive swimmer.
Yeah.
Oh, what was your event?
Butterfly. Swam the 100 fly.
How do you do that again?
Yeah,
it's like throwing
a lot of rhythm there.
Wow.
You got
that looks
shoulders in my senior picture, pretty strong.
Your senior picture, shoulders up to your ears.
It's kind of what it was. Yeah, lifeguard tans and shoulders. But
man, good for you. I just threw my shoulder out just doing that, right there. That it's actually not a joke. What drew you to swimming?
I don't know really. I love the water. I've always loved the water. I liked playing in the pool.
Yeah.
And I think actually my younger sister got interested in swimming, and my mom and dad put her on the team, and I thought, well, that looks cool. And I could do it, in a lot of ways. That's one of the things that drew me to it is I'm tall, so people often think that I'm a volleyball player or a basketball player. I am neither of those, not nearly coordinated enough for that, but I loved swimming in it, and it made me happy.
Well, swimming takes a heck of a lot of coordination. Something else you wanted to do when you were a kid and then grew up to do, you said news. That's my dream job. That's what I want to do.
Yeah, I know the moment that I said it. It was January 28th in 1986. So I would have been 9 years old, giving away ages. But 9 years old, sitting in my fourth grade classroom, and I was fascinated by the space program. And so growing up in Nashville, we heard a lot about, or outside of Nashville, we heard a lot about the space program in Alabama, and wanted to go to space camp, and that was so cool.
Yeah.
Thought, ooh, that'd be neat to be an astronaut. I lived across the street, down a couple houses from astronaut Ray Seddon's family. Her father lived on our street, and so I thought, well, if she can do it from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, so can I. So I wanted to be an astronaut, and we sat in our classroom, and if you remember, Krista McCullough was on that flight, and so our teachers were very interested. She was a teacher who was going to go into space, had trained for that. So our teachers were watching, and we all sat and watched, and then the Challenger exploded as we watched. And we spent the entire day watching news coverage of it. And I remember my teachers being very emotional, and me trying to figure out what was going on and make sense of it. Went home that night, and I told my parents, I know what I want to do. I want to tell people about the news.
Wow.
I never wanted to do anything else.
Yeah, for people who were old enough, I had the same experience. Little different for me. They, drag the TVs in to show us the shuttle launch. Everybody gathered around. I was in elementary school, just like you. And then the explosion happened. Like, teachers were totally stunned. Instead of continuing to watch, I guess we were young enough that they just took the TVs out. It's like, hey kids, let's have a little break. Why don't you head outside? Do some recess. Still telling stories.
I think that's what it was. I think that and remember then we really did only have a couple of news anchors. It was the days of the Tom Brokaws and the Dan Rathers and the people the Jane Pauleys who you really did turn to when you wanted information and you wanted to know what was going on. And I think that credibility and that feeling, helping people feel safe, giving them the information they need to take action or to do what they need to do, not do what they need to do, know what's going on around them. I think that's what probably drew me to it was, and the stories. I'm fascinated by people, what motivates people. I'm fascinated by the psychology of why people do what they do. And I have a deep interest in all of that. So when there's a story to tell, I want to tell it.
We're going to talk more about your stories that you did here in a second. First, though, how'd you find yourself in Boise? So it was Montana, then Boise?
I went from Helena, Montana. That was my first job. I drove there sight unseen when I accepted that job. Lived in Helena for a couple of years, and then I moved to Redding, California. And then from Redding, California, was looking for my next move and ended up here.
Those are really three beautiful towns.
They were. I did. I absolutely loved all three. Very, very neat experiences. Different things at each. Evening anchor in Helena, morning anchor, which you would appreciate in Redding, and then came here to do weekends and report during the week.
And you were a crime reporter. You had some very memorable stories here at KTVB in Boise. One, the return of Elizabeth Smart for people who remember that. One of your first stories here. Now, before we talk a little bit more about that, we actually went into the archives and found one of your first stories. No, it was great, about Smart's return back in 2003. Let's take a look at that.
Tonight it is here in downtown Salt Lake City at Liberty Park that people gather to celebrate Elizabeth's reunion with her family. You can see people behind me still celebrating. There is definitely a festive atmosphere. There were people hugging, smiling, a sense of unity. It is a reminder that together they searched, together they prayed, and tonight you see, together they celebrate. There were cheers, prayer, and song.
It's pretty emotional to see how many people are actually supporting her, and we're out there for her.
Tonight is the first time the people of Salt Lake City have been able to get together, talk about the last 2 days and the 9 months that led up to them. Many of the families here were part of the search for Elizabeth that began last June.
When she disappeared, it was just something mothers do. You go out and help them look.
There are little girls, little kids. They're our children. They're all of our children.
It's like one of
yours was taken.
I've grown to love this family.
Advocate John Walsh joined the Smarts on stage, thanking everyone for supporting this family and giving more praise to the couples who spotted her in Sandy, Utah 2 days ago.
They had the courage to make that call, and they are the reason that Elizabeth Smart is back home tonight. And
thrilled that she's home, and we're thrilled that that we can be here and be part of it.
It makes me feel really good inside that people care.
Now, the Smarts know that everyone is very anxious to see Elizabeth, but say the time is not yet right. Instead, Elizabeth made a poster thanking everyone for their support. In Salt Lake City, Andrea Dearden, Idaho's News Channel 7.
Haven't aged a day. First off, Andrea, and what was it like covering that story, like right out of the blocks, a huge national story?
Yeah, I had been here, I think, 9 days.
Whoa.
Been working in the newsroom. And so that happened. You know, we found out she'd been rescued, and it head out the door.
Yeah.
As the story goes, from the people that were in the newsroom watching me, it was apparently a frantic, oh no, I live by myself. I have 2 ginormous mastiffs, 2 big dogs, and a little dog that need to. What am I going to do with them? But there was no option not to go. Meaning, I absolutely wanted to cover the story, and it was an international story.
Yeah.
And so, as I was heading out the door, I was frantic to try to figure out how I was going to take care of the stuff that was here, and then make it to Utah to cover that story with 2 people that I had never worked with before, really had never even talked to, the photographer that I was working with. I remember driving a few hours before he turned to me and said, do you even like this, what we're listening to? And,
oh, no.
Yeah. I was eating vegan at the time. I think we went to Outback Steakhouse for dinner, things like that. There's some funny stories that came out of that trip, but really it was my first. I think probably what was great about it is that it allowed me to show that I cared about this, that I wanted to do a good job, that I was going to represent Channel 7 in a way that I think they were okay with, and that was good. So hope. And, it just gave me an opportunity to really kind of have a presence in the community and really introduce myself as a reporter here.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of eyes on those stories. And can we talk about this? Wasn't on the rundown, but can we talk about this a little bit? It seems like, especially now, true crime is such a big thing, and there's some criticism out there that people are just trying to turn, tragedy into ratings.
Right.
How critical is it, and how delicate do you have to be in situations like that, where you're talking about Elizabeth Smart or whomever, like these potential tragedies or just this incredible trauma happening to these people, and talking about it, doing it justice without sensationalizing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the last thing you want to do is exploit, because it really is about trust. You want the community to trust you. You want the people that you're talking with to trust you. And I think that comes down to care. What is your intent? If your intent is to just get ratings and get people to watch, and you don't care about the outcome or about how that makes people feel, I think that's a problem. When in the gap between when I was not here at Channel 7, I was working in law enforcement for law enforcement agencies. So of course, very, very connected to the people that were impacted by crimes, and working, and talking with victims and helping them to understand why certain information is being shared, why it's not. And you find that people really, I think, being able to share a story is what creates connection. Yeah. And so it's really not about if, but about how are we going to do that in a way that is respectful and really does allow people that information, like I was talking about before, that helps them to understand a little bit more about what's going on, so that makes them feel a little calmer, a little more in control, a little less scared.
You did, again, a number of really interesting stories. A number of stories about online child enticement. You're a parent, I'm a parent. Tough enough to hear these stories. How tough is it to actually report these stories? I
remember being so fascinated. That was before I had my kids, and I went with the sheriff's office and kind of sort of was embedded with one of their the detective teams, and so I was able to see from start to finish how this worked. And I was able to sit alongside them. If you remember when Dateline did How to Catch a Predator, I mean, it was very similar kind of situation. So being able to be in there and watch them on the internet, and immediately go into a chat room or a room where these, where people, strangers on a screen, were able to communicate, and to see how quickly, within seconds, how predatory the conversation got. And just how, what I would call, how they would jump on a new person in the room and immediately start talking about wanting to meet and And then, so I was able to see that, which was frightening,
Yeah.
because this wasn't, this is not someone who is posing and then putting information out and then soliciting this response. I mean, this was unsolicited, immediately people jumping on it. And then we followed through where we were inside the apartment when these older men came thinking they were there to meet a teenager, and to hear their response, and to how many of them said, I'm here to tell them not to do that. I'm here to make sure that they're safe.
Sure.
While carrying items that they're absolutely give you the impression that is not what they were there to do. And so really absolutely eye-opening. And again, that's that information that we hope helps the community understand and helps parents have the information they need to keep their kids safe.
Yeah, and so certainly eye-opening, depressing, scary, but at the same time, it has to be gratifying on some level, thinking like this is probably going to save lives out there.
You hope so, absolutely, and that is the idea, is that not to exploit and say what's happening, but this is real, and so to avoid it is, I don't see a lot of a benefit in that, and I am one of those people that I think let's get it out, in front of it, or let's get it out in front of us so that we can have that conversation and be real about whatever's going on in our community. Let's not pretend that it's not happening. Instead, let's talk about it and let's figure out the best way to approach it, find a solution.
Right, and certainly we can do that in a respectful way, but again, boy, these things really fester and thrive in darkness, and it's our job to shine some light on that.
Sure.
Speaking of which, another eye-opening sort of series of stories about addicted nurses. You did that back before really people were talking about the opioid epidemic.
Right, and this came about because we saw a woman who had been arrested. She was on the arrest page, and so I reached out to find out. I had gotten information that she was a nurse, and again, did not seek to harm her. It was there. It was public information. People were talking about it. So I reached out and asked what her story was. And what's interesting about that one is that the way it began, she was very, she did not want to talk about it, absolutely pushed back.
Sure.
And then called me a week or so later and said, this is an issue. I am struggling. There are others like me. And if you will do this story justice, if you will tell the full story, then I would want to talk to you about it. I would want to do that. And so she got put together several nurses who admitted to, taking medication that was intended for a patient, using it themselves, and then injecting their patients with saline, or using, instead of the pain medication. And that was incredibly impactful. First of all, brave and courageous for these nurses who were in recovery and working to try to change their situation, for them to share those stories, and for people to hear what that epidemic was. I mean, it was at that point it becoming a real problem, and we learned kind of the magnitude of that. And then it was that full circle moment as I was in the hospital at St. Luke's having one of my kids, and I think it was my second, and she reached out and said, I'm doing a talk, and I'm actually doing a talk where you are.
Wow.
I had just given birth, so I was not able to make it to her call. But I think
good for you. I'm busy. Good for you.
But what it was, though, I think that's something you can be very proud of. And as a reporter, I think those are the moments that you're really looking for, is that I did tell the story. It was difficult for her, but doing it respectfully and sharing it in a way that allows you to see the full story and the full picture. And I think she felt good about that, and then we maintained that connection. And I have done that, as you know. We do that. I've maintained relationships. I have friendships, dear friendships, that started because I covered a story that they were involved in, and sometimes they were really difficult stories. Yeah.
Well, that had to mean a lot. First, that she trusted you with her story, a very personal story, that she was willing to be that vulnerable with you, and then later on to see that, wow, it made a difference in her life and hopefully a lot of people's lives.
And that is exactly what I think the TV part, the broadcasting it has always been sort of secondary to me. And true story, and this is going to make me sound real, I'm sorry to all my friends in elementary school, middle school, but when my friends would come over, we would do, that's what we would do. And I wanted to play, it was to let's do a newscast, let's do a radio show. And
you are not the first person on this show to say that.
Okay, I feel better about that, maybe. And that's, so it wasn't ever, I would have told people all along, it is that connecting to people, it's the understanding and what drives them, where that comes from, how did they get to where they are, their backstory, if you will, all the factors that played into that. That's really what is of interest to me. And the fact that we get to share that with others is kind of bonus.
Yeah. Speaking of meeting people and having long relationships with them, while working here, you met some guy, let me get the name right.
Yeah, there's a guy.
Brian Holmes. What does he do for a living?
Yeah, I think he's on, I think he does some show or something, right?
I'm not.
He talks on the TV too?
I work the early mornings, so I've heard he's around later in the day, but who knows?
The question is, what hasn't he done at this station, honestly?
Yes. Thank you. I used to say I've had every job in the newsroom. Not true. Brian Holmes has. Whether he's been a photog.
Yeah, I met him as a videographer.
Reporter. Yeah.
That's. I mean, we certainly, it was kind of like a made-for-TV movie. We met as, we worked together. We were friends. We were did not date initially at all. In fact, he likes to remember that I didn't remember meeting him. Or he likes to tell people that I didn't remember meeting him. He remembers the story of me running frantically through the newsroom to get to Utah. I don't remember him being there, but I'm sure he was.
Wow.
So we did start dating about a year into my time here, and are now married. We have 3 kids together, and it's been almost 20 years.
Wow. Amazing. Because I remember those days, not to date myself as well, but I started here in 2002. So I remember those times. Really takes me back. And you have 3 wonderful kids. Tell me about them.
They are pretty awesome. I have our oldest is, Brian has a son who is 24, so he's my stepson. And then I have our oldest is 19. She goes to Boise State. Her name is Jackson. So on the Boise State Talkin' Broncos. She works at Boise Public Radio. So following in somebody's footsteps. It wants to be a political reporter and really, really interested in that. Also works at the Y. I have our middle daughter is Allie. She will graduate high school this year from Rocky Mountain, also on the speech and debate team, wants to be a forensic psychologist. And our youngest is Mac, who is 16. And he is on speech and debate team, does great. All of them really excel at that. And he's also an FFA, so he is raising a steer this year. Last year we did a sheep.
Future farmer of America.
He is, and he's very into the ag business idea and kind of wanting to study that. And so 2 very different worlds. When he has a suit and tie on one day, doing his speech and debate, and then next day he's in his Carhartts and he's out. He's been lambing this week. He's been helping the lambs.
I raised sheep for 4-H. Absolutely, market lambs.
Yes, that's what he had last year.
Won a lot of awards. I have nothing to teach him at all. I don't remember it.
His lamb's name was Cheese, so it's Mac and Cheese. And this year his steer is named Roni, Mac and Roni. I don't know what we're going to do when we run out of mac and cheese themed names for the animals, but not yet. He's a witty one.
Of course he's in speech and debate as well. Have you seen that video or a GIF where it's like the guy rapidly ages? That was me right then, because I remember when all of those kids, you brought them in as babies while you were like producing, working, getting ready for the show on the weekend, and a little baby right there
laying
playing
on
around.
the floor. We called her Sunday's Child, and I actually counted contractions. I had a piece of paper, and I was timing my contractions the night before my first was born. I anchored the newscast that night. She was born the next morning. It is a family here, right? Everything happens in that newsroom.
You're marking stuff down. They're like, is that breaking news? You're like, maybe. Might be breaking water news. Right. You worked at the Ada County Sheriff's Office for a while as the comms director, person who's really, if you don't know, the go-between between reporters, the public, and then also Sheriff's Office. What was that experience like, sort of being on the other side of news?
I loved it. I was there 17 years, and that really is because I was a crime reporter. The sheriff at the time kind of asked me to come over and be that liaison. And the way I looked at it was able to do a lot of the same things I did as a reporter here, I was able to do on behalf of that agency. So really tell the stories of the agency, help to connect the community. And then that kind of expanded. And really I learned more about myself, understanding what I wanted to do and how I wanted to expand my education. So I went back and got my master's degree, really understanding how people work together, kind of the same concept of what motivates people, how do we give employees what they need to really do great work. And so that was something that I also really liked to study and learn about. and then, and in doing that, be able to share those employees' stories and the work that they were doing, because they do tremendous work every day.
Right.
To be able to share that and let the community know what they're doing for them, and how we really are, the people and the police are so connected and need to be. They cannot work independent of one another, can't live and thrive independent of one another. And so to try to build those connections in an authentic way, in a genuine way,
Right.
was what my goal was.
Yeah, absolutely. Officers really part of the community.
Absolutely.
Community policing.
Yeah.
You contain multitudes. I'm going to try to get through all of this, but we'll see. You donated stem cells, and you were inspired by the family of someone right here at KTVB.
Yes, it's all connected, right? It all comes back to that KTVB family. Yeah, my director, when I was here and I was the weekend anchor, our director, his daughter had a very, very rare condition and needed a stem cell transplant, bone marrow transplant, and so I signed up to be on the registry. It did not match for her, but several years later, about 6 or 7 years later, it was in 2010, I matched 2 people in the same week.
Wow.
So then they do testing, and they went back and did further testing, and they determined which one I would be the best match for. And so in April of 2010, I was able to go and go through that process and donate to an adult man who had leukemia.
Wow.
Yeah.
Helping people left and right.
It was
Andrea
awesome.
Dearden.
I would do it again in a heartbeat.
You also run a Pilates studio.
Yeah.
Is that how it's pronounced? Not
Pilates.
pilots?
No, pie
Okay,
and
you're
la-
not training pilots.
And it's not pie and lattes, although we do
Man,
like
I
those.
was going to sign up.
We do
Cancel
like
that.
those. Cancel that. I thought you said, I have a sign right in the studio. Oh no, I thought you said pie and lattes. Yeah, I do. I found that after having 3 kids in 2.5 years, I needed something to do that was not in the pool, because that takes way too long. Your hair's crunchy and chlorine, gotta have to find something a little more efficient. And so I was drawn to Pilates, and never did I imagine ever owning a studio, but I met the people. I loved the people at the studio, and there was an opportunity, and so I ended up buying the studio, and then eventually opened up an independent studio on my own. So yeah, I do that every day of the week.
All right, and you know what? We don't have a ton of sponsors here, but which studio is that? Free plug?
B Pilates. So it's BE period Pilates and Fitness on State Street in Garden City.
Fantastic.
Come see us. It's awesome.
And you also decorate cakes. Why create such beautiful art if you're just going to eat it?
It's the creation. If somebody said, "What's your word?" I would say it's transformation. The idea of taking something and creating, taking one thing and creating something else. And that's true of people. It's true of at Pilates, watching people come in not confident, not knowing, not feeling strong, and watching them transform into a different outlook. Same thing with fondant. You take fondant, this block of nothing, and I can turn it into and spend time, and I also love just it's very stress relieving to me to really be, tactile and build things. I think that's part of my personality, that I enjoy that, so I like to create crazy cakes, and I like to challenge myself. If I can do that, let's see how crazy I can make it. Let's see how interesting I can make it. So I've had fun doing some interesting cakes.
Builder, creator, challenge overcomer, Andrea Dearden. Thank you for joining us. If you have any comments, questions for us here at This Just In, send them to that number, 208-321-5614. You can also reach Brian Holmes at the same number. Don't text me, though. #JustIn. See you next time.